Let's went back to the beginning. Yes, we are there. Then with the exhibition, we also did a lot of material, educational material with the university, with the local community, and always in a kind of exchange to fill the guideline of the countries. But it was sometimes difficult to try to manage because we could do only one document in different language. But I think we kind of managed it. We did also a catalog exhibition. You can find them online, and you will find French, English, Spanish, and Dutch. And that's the educational resources. Also, we have a website, Virtual Caribbean and Carib, and we'll find those teaching Indigenous history and heritage. I think it's really interesting. It's one of the PhD. She worked on educational material. And because we need to find a way to talk to everyone, we also did some games. I think you can try this one. Boats. It's kind of canyoning with the app in between the island. It's not so easy, I can tell you. And this one is, that's my favorite, because I'm doing ceramic. And because you can use the tool I have to record my ceramic, and you can make a pot yourself, and you can use all the rim shape, the lip shape, the general shape, and after you can add color.
Virtually?
Yes, and you use the color I use, the material I use, and you can add decoration. And the plan was to use this with a 3D printer for you to be able to print your own indigenous pots. But we missed the part of the 3D. Then the idea is always to, we didn't do it for us. And in each island where we gave the exhibition, we say, okay, this is your exhibition. Do whatever you want, as you want. The only thing we ask, and it's still the only important request, is that the exhibition needs to be free. That's the only request. And after this, do whatever you want. And in each island, we try to relate it to the main topic we have. You can ask object, you can improve the exhibition, you can even ask us to help you to build another group. This one is the example of what I did in Guadeloupe, and I had a focus on identity. And the pink panel is the one where I put a lot of information, because my point was always to try to make people understand that we are mixed people, we have our identity, but in our identity everything needs to be included, and Indigenous also. And I put emphasis and a real focus on this one. And in other islands that was not their main focus. And this is why we plan to do everything. And the music. No, after I just picture. It's then the what I was telling you, the focus on the multicultural landscape. And it's we did also, I tried to do a kind of photo record, and this guy just there is an activist with Africanity. It's like, yes, we are coming from Africa, we are African. And when I asked him to do this, he was at the beginning he was like, why me? And after we had a lot of exchange, and I was like, yeah, but you have to think about all those improvements of what Indigenous people bring us when we use Kabash, Alf. This is a pure Indigenous knowledge, and I think after a few a few days, I succeed to convince him, and he's in my book. And officially, he's even in the general exhibition in all the island. And I think I was really proud of this because with all those actions, he could open his mind to our diversity. Just to give you some pictures, some booklets we did ourselves, plus the one already existing. Then I will show you just picture of what we did in the other region. This is where we are actually. Aruba, Grenada. Next one will be St. Vincent next month, and we are working for Jamaica and probably the States. Why not? Then yes, we try to go everywhere. I want Suriname also, but we are in the process. Yes, and as you can see, it's just picture of different opening in the island. And Dominica, you see this is the old chef, the past chef. This is Irving's there. You can see Trinidad, Aruba, just to show you a picture. That's what I wanted to show you about the Caribbean ties. And this is Garifuna. This is this picture you can find in the exhibition. And what we are doing is every time we go to an island for opening, we come with indigenous people because in some islands they even don't think about this. And it's for us, I think we are facilitators of bringing exchange and knowledge. And this is the goal of Caribbean Ties, and we want to go beyond the project because actually the project Nexus 1492 is over, but the exhibition is there, and now I'm in charge of all the exhibition, and this is the new challenge I will have for the next years. Then, if you don't have the exhibition yet in the country, feel free to tell me.
It's important that this exhibition keeps growing and changing, not only with contributions from the local communities, indigenous communities, but also the scholarship communities. And so it changes and shifts and grows even as it moves forward. As we transition to talk about the other project that we will highlight, there are handouts that will come to you. And I also wanted to read, as I said, for those of you who came in late, we will have a Zoom recording that includes Vinci because he could not be here, and materials that he had submitted that he wanted to share with us that we could not access. But I do have a statement from him also that he sent to us just today. And in his words, the work done by the Archaeological Department of Leiden and the resulting Caribbean ties is welcome and applauded by the Caribbean Indigenous Heritage Association. You should know he is vice president of this association, and he's a representative of this exhibition has been in multiple locations and continuing, I think next in Dominica. It brings forward evidence of our ancestors being all over the region and shows their mobility and their governance. Further research is showing there was also training of indigenous people with various Europeans. Therefore, it's important for MAC to work towards helping in the re-education of this word, that the Caribbean indigenous people did not vanish entirely, but are still present, and that the linkages are being built for opportunities to participate in modern development equally while maintaining our historical practices. I know several people have asked me, why is the Smithsonian interested in not the other slavery project, which is a U.S. project and goes beyond, although it's with the National Museum of the American Indian, the work of that museum is the entire hemisphere. One reason that we wanted to present this project at NAC is because there are the historical 1492, post-1492 movements, eliminations, genocides, etc. But in the United States, there was formal policy in the 18th and 19th century to forcibly remove indigenous people who were especially in the coastal areas along the southern United States by boat to the Caribbean, and specifically Jamaica and other places. So we have historical communities that were in the past in North America who have been 3, 4, 5, 6 generations in the Caribbean as well. This is even aside from that much larger connectedness that we all know of that is hemisphere-wide and beyond. I'm going to ask Travis now to really, what we've handed out to you, our background materials and the links that we have referenced here, you can find on YouTube. There's some images that we have not been able to download also because our original presenter left very last minute today with her broken leg back to the US. But we have basically an explanation of what this project, The Other Slavery, which is about indigenous slavery and peonage in the United States, that is well into the 20th century, well into this decade, and that's available on demand. We have the National Museum of the American Indian has an education department that is a large one that has developed Native Knowledge 360 with educational materials and curriculum related to this. We've included a glossary of terms so it's clear how we are using this. We being Smithsonian, okay. How the Smithsonian is using this. And one of the first essays that we had that really helped to frame this entire project is this essay by Andre Resendez. We apologize, it's only in English. We do have it in Spanish, and we can obtain it in French as well. But really, this was sort of one of the baseline essays that really helped us frame how this is being sought. This is a multi-year project for the Smithsonian, and we're approaching it by region by region. So the first focus was the American Southwest. What used to be part of Mexico became the United States, New Mexico, etc. And as you know, Mexico extended up to what is now the state of Colorado. So we're talking a very huge, very large, very old history. The second region right now is California, that's under investigation with a special focus on the missions, the Jesuit and other Catholic missions, etc. And what is coming forward next is a focus on the American South, and that's where especially the Caribbean, although it's not exclusive, really there are a lot of these ties. Also, it's important because the U.S. South was divided because of the Civil War, the United States Civil War, and there were splits among various nations. Were they pro or for slavery? The majority were against slavery, but there were some that became pro-slavery because the promise of U.S. citizenship was part of that. And of course, it ended up not happening that way. But there were further complications and splits and further divisions and movements into the Caribbean as a result of that. So that is research that is beginning only now, and NMAI, as we call it, is reaching out to work collaboratively and seek assistance from MAC institutions and others in the process. So I'm going to let Travis, elaborate more on the project. And thank you for your patience.
I think Deborah kind of really hit all the highlights. She did. But the project was originally started with Eduardo Diaz and our Smithsonian Latino Center, which has now become the National Museum of the American Latino, became part of that. And the conversation started in 2018 between Eduardo, Lonnie Bunch, who's now the Secretary of the Smithsonian, and Kevin Cooper, Director of the American Indian Museum. And like most good projects at Smithsonian, it moved very quickly, and those really discussions lasted at least a year before they brought in other people to start doing it. And from that time, as the planning really started, the pandemic really hit. And from there, it gave them more time to work on the project, but also include more community voices. It's the foundation of the American Indian Museum is to work and represent communities with their own services. And within the YouTube, which the link here, you can find the American Indian website. And at the bottom, there should be a link to YouTube. You have to do some searching, have cards for more direct access. But the full symposium, you'll see scholars, experts, curators, and authors speaking, as well as interviews with the communities. Because a lot of these histories, as we know, really come from the community oral histories. And sometimes that's extrapolated between archaeological records or other scholars of the parts that aren't discussed and recorded. This is it's very difficult because, especially in the United States, slavery is only talked about in one way, and a lot of American history is only talked about in one way. And even as the museum, I worked there for 16 years, I've been gone for 7 years. It's been uncovered even up to Alaska, where I'm from, by the Russian colonization hundreds of years ago, which is a bit more recent. It still has lasting impacts. Telling these complete stories gives a different perspective, which these new museums are able to do, that oftentimes some of the, even Smithsonian, over 175 years, were unwilling to get into in this space. I think you covered everything else. I think the stage that NMAI is at right now is really trying to build those relationships, to hear these other stories, and find other partners to kind of expand upon this conversation and let the general public and web public know what foundational stories these are that have kind of shaped the Western Hemisphere.
I just wanted to add that prior to her sudden departure earlier today, this morning, Michelle Delaney, who is the Associate Director for Research at the National Museum of the American Indian, and there are several departments under that, including the collections, that we refer to it as NMAI, has a completely separate collections facility that was designed and constructed with community engagement and under community guidelines. It was designed with this in mind, so that we have, there are collections that are treated in terms of their sacredness, in terms of their public visibility or invisibility, in terms of whether they're spiritually active or spiritually dead, where families can come in and interact in private ways, etc. But she was just really delighted to be here because apparently, and I'm not knowledgeable of the collections, they have a huge Caribbean collection, and they would like it to be accessed, they would like it to be returned, they would like, and this is always done in consultation, and that is, this is part of it, although the NMAI has been ahead of the curve, especially for Smithsonian, since its founding in 1989, 1990. We now have a new Smithsonian, pan-Smithsonian policy that was only formalized in the last 2 months, I think, around what we call ethical return. And no matter what the unit, whether it's air and space, rocks, dinosaurs, whatever it is, no matter what the medium and material, it is all under investigation for return to its rightful communities under those conditions. And the museums have to underwrite the expense of that as well. And NMAI has done that for 20 years. Now the other museums are being directed, and these policies, budgets, etc., are being put in place. But she said she was astounded at the amount of Caribbean material. And I'm sure you do. But now, and they are ready, and they have the authorization. It's not under like, well, we're doing a good thing, but the Smithsonian is behind us. It's standard policy for everyone, and it is mandated. So this is something that, in conversation with you, in collaboration with you, they want to begin to plan and schedule. NMAI has one of the best staffs for this, and has since its beginning, in nearly 20 years, and stand prepared to do that. And the Smithsonian sort of central administration is providing support for that as well, for those units. We'll talk about units, because there are 19 museums. For those museums that are less prepared, but it is mandatory now. It's not feel good, it's not optional. She regrets that she could not be here because she said she's learned so much just in the 2 days that she was here, and hopes to be able to do more with you very directly.
Send her our best remarks.
That's true. Because that we were going to keep the session just a bit shorter, we're ready for any questions that you may have.
Okay, we're about to take questions, but I'm going to be a very rude MC and say that there wasn't enough copies. So would you be willing to share links to everything, or is that for your copies?
My cards.
Okay, perfect. So you can come pick up the cards at the end of the session. And I'm sorry, this half of the room I ran out before I got to me. So I wanted to ask that first. Thank you. Questions?
So, I have a question for academia and also a question. Today about the Lucayan and Taino, does your project include a DNA component?
We have ancient
Because, for the Bahamas, for the Lucayan component, and I think the researcher doing extracting the ancient DNA is from Leiden University, Heinz Schroeder, because the Lucayan example was the most successful example, and it's through that they were tracking which group they're calling Taino, which group they're calling Lucayan because of these DNA connections. But there are more complex connections that join things in there. But thank you. It's good to know that. So next, on to the Smithsonian, the Native American Museum. Yes, your museum has extensive materials from the Caribbean because in the past, up to about 40 years ago, it was standard practice in archaeology and anthropology to send out researchers and to take things back to the institutions. And in the past, the response when institutions like mine from the Bahamas would inquire about those materials and the possibility of having them returned, we would get a standard no. But now we are willing to hear the response go further, because for the Bahamas, for the Lucayan people, again, the DNA research is helping to reinforce what the archaeology had been saying. The Lucayan people were the first people to meet Columbus, but they were also the first people to be devastated by that encounter. As far as we are aware today, no current Bahamian has any biological connection to the Lucayan people. So we are their voice now, and we do not want them to go unheard. So we would like to continue that discussion.
I'm sorry, if I could just add to that, this involves not only the National Museum of the American Indian, but as you know, the National Museum of Natural History, which has human remains. I've served on that committee, which is just finalizing the policy for that about ethical returns with respect and documentation that the museum has to pay for as well. So this is not your institution incurring cost. It's not, the final policy has not been yet released. There's a finalizing of it going on over this summer, and I anticipate by the fall, by September at the latest, it will be shared. But the National Museum of Natural History is the culprit in the history of the Smithsonian. There are so many others, of course, but there is that one. And beginning immediately, Smithsonian will no longer accept or acquire any human remains unless an individual wills it in their personal will or final testament. It's completely it just will not happen. And the Secretary's timeline for all of this to be accomplished, and we're talking tens of thousands, is within 3 years.
Wow.
Right here.
So I had a question.
Can you raise your voice, please?
Yes, I had a question. This front? Inside?
It's for the recording only.
It's for the recording.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I had a question for Katerina concerning the Caribbean Ties project. How long does a project like that take? And is it continuous? Do you start and stop? Like, what's the timeline for something like that?
Okay, so, sorry, I'm gonna repeat the question.
I have a soft voice, I'm
It's
sorry.
okay. So she was asking about Caribbean Ties and how long it took to put together the exhibition.
We start in 2014. 14. That was the beginning. Yes, and we opened it in 19. And but we were like, maybe then, but it's an ongoing project.
Are you answering the same question?
Yeah,
Okay.
as an institution that participated in the process of our latest museum, part of the reason of the length was that they took such care in the consultation sessions that weren't just superficial, this is what we're doing, do you agree or not, but more like, what would you like to see in this process? How can you bring your Indigenous community voices in? So I just wanted to make that clear in terms of the timeline, that the care and the collaboration was a big part of that. Yeah.
And I actually I met with Arminda from the National Archaeological Museum to brainstorm the whole idea of the exhibition in 2012. So even before that, there was all the ideation and the fundraising that happened before. Crystal has a question.
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit, again, continuing on the TIES project, can you speak a little bit to the creation of the materials writ large? I mean, it's incredibly impressive how deep you've both got the physical materials, the educational materials, but were those all generated kind of by the single team and disseminated? Were they printed by you guys? And how did all of that part come together?
Everything was lead. I don't know if because we are talking about co-creation, was print and did in the Netherlands. And all the catalogs, everything was made there, and we ship the project. That I need to say that the project was led by Professor Corinne Hoffman. And yes, everything was shipped from Rotterdam to all the Caribbean. That was a huge also story about traveling. And the material also was sent by the post, but everything is also online then now actually. And with then you can decide to print if you don't have any more copy. And what we did is we create the website to have access to the material for everyone. And on the website, what is interesting, like in Guadeloupe, I did a kind of movie of I had local partner who paid movie to explain to the people, and we put all those information. You can put it online, and someone else from another museum can use it because everything we do for the exhibition, we know that we sign, all of us, we sign agreements that it's to be shared. Then on the website, you can go and you will find the material for you in the museum related to the exhibition or not.